Finally, welcome, Shelley, to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thank you for having me.
It was a no-brainer. I've been trying to connect with you for a while. Then you finally answered my LinkedIn or whatever, and I became a part of the winner's circle, apparently. So, which I'm grateful for. No, welcome. I think everybody will see how you clearly deserve to be on a Leaders Who Care series. And so the place to start, if you would, is if you could just introduce yourself. Don't do what most guys do. They first tell me what their position is in the company. That's what they always do, guys, and everything. Just tell me a little bit about, where you're from originally, where you are now, a little bit about you, and we'll get into more of that as well. And maybe something you've never told anybody ever, you want to reveal now, your favorite color, stuff like that. And then we'll get into the meat. How's that?
All right, sounds good. So hello everyone. My name is Shelley Winner, like winner chicken dinner. And yes, that is my real last name. So I feel very fortunate to have that last name. I think it's a big part of my success today.
You're a winner.
Yep. I am born and raised in Sacramento, California, where I currently reside today. And I am a huge advocate for restorative justice, which means that I am all about helping the underserved community of the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. So.
And which part are you going to say that you never told anybody?
I never told anybody. Let's see.
You don't have to.
Yeah. So.
What's your favorite color?
My favorite color is pink.
That's a good one. All right. Well, if something comes to you that you want to reveal, just interrupt me.
I will.
And we'll hit it. In the meantime, what were you like as a kid or a teenager? Were you like the one that wanted to try everything first type of girl, or were you quiet? Were you playing sports? Were you reading? What were you like?
I was very I've always been an extrovert, so I was very social as a kid. I loved to roller skate. So I lived at the roller skating rink almost every weekend. I used to wear my roller skates. We lived in this apartment building, and I'd wear my roller skates and just roller skate around all day. Go hang out with my friends. We'd roller skate together. I was a very charismatic kid, well liked, got along easily with my kids I went to school with until I got into junior high.
And then what happened?
Then I got into, well, there were some kids. There was one popular girl in particular didn't like me because the boy that she liked had a crush on me. And so I dealt with, that.
Of course.
Yeah.
I said, of course, junior high.
Yeah. So I did deal with some bullying in middle school, which was very challenging for me.
Yeah.
And then high school was a breeze. I had a boyfriend I met when I was 13. He was 16. And I was in 8th grade at the time. He was a sophomore. And so I was getting ready to start high school. When we met, I was getting ready to graduate, and then I was going to be starting at the same high school he went to. So I got to go to my very first love. I got to go to high school with him. And we were together my freshman and sophomore year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And your husband knows all about that, right?
Yeah, he knows all about it.
Good.
Well, we all have our first loves, right?
Of course. You gotta be a first somewhere. So, and
Yeah.
because it's the first, it's got its own special everything to it. So,
oh yeah, for sure. We're still friends. It's funny is we're still friends today.
Well, that's always cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen, but that's always cool.
Yeah.
So you got obviously a unique journey. Let's look at your journey, and maybe sharing with us your experiences from school onward to some degree, in the timeline of how, they say religious, not religious, say God, whoever puts things in front of people that can handle them, and for a reason, because you were meant to do something, make a difference somewhere. Just share about your experiences and the timeline of how your life evolved, the struggles and challenges you had, what I would call your real life education, as well as your computer science education. Can you share a little bit about how that evolved?
Yeah. It started, well, my parents were both very, very young when my mom gave birth to me. She was 18, and my real father left. He enrolled into the military, and my stepfather came into the picture when I was about 6 months old, and he's all I've ever known as a father. I loved him very, very, very much. But he wasn't the best role model. So he struggled with alcoholism. First, it started with alcohol and then progressed to harder drugs, like methamphetamine. So most of my life, my dad was in and out of prison for DUIs. Then he was in and out of prison for selling drugs. And so this is all, this was what I was exposed to from a very young age. And my mother, although she was not an addict, I would say her addiction was men. And because my father was just basically, in her eyes, screwing up the household, she wanted to move on quickly to, I guess, deal with the pain of what she had to go through with my father. And the best way to do that was being with another man to help get her mind off of my father. So, and then when she would date men, that was, what was important, not my brother and I. So she would leave us at a family member's house. It was our great aunt's house. And we basically raised ourselves, my brother and I. And we had no real positive role models, no one really guiding us or speaking life into us. And so I followed in the footsteps of my father. And statistically, they say 76% of children follow in their parents' footsteps. And so, like my father, I ended up becoming an addict and eventually a drug dealer, and ultimately ended up in prison just like him. And I started experimenting with drugs in, I'd say that I think the eighth grade it was. And first it was weed. First it was alcohol, then it was weed. And then in high school, I started experimenting with meth. Now, although I was experimenting, I just used it socially. It wasn't like this addiction. I actually didn't start using meth heavily until I was 25. And that's when it really became like a full-blown addiction where I couldn't even function without drugs. And so that was really my childhood in a nutshell.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And, we don't, if that's all you see, it's pretty hard not to be that,
It is, because you only know what you know. And up until that point, that was all that I had learned about life and what life was about. My dad, although he loved me and I loved him so much, he didn't know any better, and he thought partying in doing drugs, was cool. He told me, or he got me drunk when I was 11 years old for the very first time. He taught me how to play quarters. And it was actually really like a bonding moment for him and I.
Yeah.
And I got shit-faced drunk. Can I cuss? Okay.
Go for
I
it.
got,
We're like,
he got me drunk. I went to school the next day with a hangover.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize it was a hangover, but looking back, I was definitely sick. I was hungover that. And And then when I lived with him for a brief period. He'd be in and out of prison because he usually had very short sentences, usually no more than a year. So he'd get out, he'd try to get back on his feet for a short period of time, and then he'd start, screwing his life up again and would get back into drugs. And but there was a short period where he got out, and my mom she couldn't handle taking care of us. It was just too much responsibility for her. So she helped my dad get an apartment and said that we were going to come live with him. Well, that didn't work out so great. Well, we ended up going to live with him, but then he started selling drugs from the house. So then we had people in and out of our house at all hours of the night. He was selling methamphetamine. He literally sat me down one day and told me that the rule of the house is that if I ever wanted to do any hard drugs, that I had to do them with him.
Oh, great. It's a good rule, I guess. I don't
Right.
know. That's the bonding moments. I wonder,
Yeah.
you said that not jokingly, but you said it, well, just like that, a bonding moment, and yet it really is a bonding moment in a weird way.
It is. Yeah. Yep.
And then he, like you said, didn't know any better. It so leads to a lot of stuff you're doing where we don't realize how impactful people are as role models or as influencers. Sometimes it could be in a minute, and we'll talk about influencers in a little bit. But especially if they don't know, you see this in small towns and big towns. But where people become addicts, like you said before, your mom was an addict on men. There's different types of drugs that we have, and somehow we have to have people in our lives that show us another way. Otherwise, you can't. You're kind of stuck. And our firm Fifth Element, we launched it on the basis that leaders in anything in life can do way better when they're doing good at the same time. And we also talk a lot about on untapped talent, which includes veterans, refugees, but also formerly incarcerated individuals. And you certainly, not necessarily by choice, it happened that you became a leader in this type of thinking, I think, from a really unique and special perspective. Could you share a little bit about how you got out of that to some degree, the story, and also then I found it very interesting when you shared to me about when you were looking for jobs and you applied to a company, you can tell which company, and they offered you the job, etc. Can you tell that?
Yeah. So the way that I was able to get out of this, or I should say, the way I was able to break that cycle, that what I refer to as the losing loop, pun very much intended for, to be a play off of my last name.
Yeah, I
know. So in order to break that losing loop, that vicious cycle that's passed down from generation to generation, the key is having access to knowledge. The key is education. You have to learn a different way of thinking, a different way of being, in order to change your life. And after I got arrested, I knew I knew that there was another way of life out there for me, and I just didn't know how to go about it. And I figured, well, maybe I should get myself into treatment and see what happens. And I was open-minded to it. And so when I went into treatment, skeptical about it being able to help me really stay sober, because I really enjoyed using drugs. But I knew that if I didn't try, then my only end results would be to keep ending up incarcerated or eventually potentially death. So when I got myself into treatment, I started learning a new way of life, a new way to think. I started to learn how to love myself. I started developing my critical and rational thinking skills, my analytical thinking skills. I started making better decisions. I started to love myself. I started to learn to forgive myself. By the time I actually got sentenced, I was a completely transformed person. And I believe there's a higher power. I am a spiritual person. I do believe in God. And this treatment program was a faith-based treatment program that also helped me draw closer to him during this time. And I truly believe that he did a transformational work in me as well, spiritually. And so by the time I got sentenced, I was totally changed. I went into the prison. I was very fortunate because the prison that I was at had a ton of rehabilitative programs that I had access to that would only, build on that foundation that was built in that treatment program. And so I signed up for any and every program that I could get my hands on. And I took classes on public speaking and leadership skills, entrepreneurship class. I took a class on how to explain your conviction, how to write a resume, all kinds of various programs. And so by the time my sentence was coming to an end, I had all this new knowledge. My brain, I literally rewired my brain.
Well,
And for me, it was like, okay. I felt like a new person. And, as I neared the end of my sentence, then came the fear of, okay, now that I've done all this work and I'm getting ready to get out, what am I going to do with my life? Because I know I'm going to hit barrier after barrier because of my criminal record. And I just remember being very specific with God about what I wanted when I was released. I was very specific with him, and I just say him because that's all I know to refer to God as. But I was very specific with God that I wanted to work. I didn't want some dead end job. I wanted a career with a living wage. I wanted to work in tech, and I let it be known. And
yeah,
oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
So I get out of prison and I have to go to what's called a halfway house. So halfway house is really just you're halfway to freedom. That's why they call it a halfway house, but you're still considered you're still incarcerated. They just give you a little bit more freedom. That's it. So I go to the halfway house and I end up, long story short, I end up applying for a job at the Microsoft retail store. Now, I figured this was going to be my, low-hanging fruit, my easy in to get my foot into the door at this company. And then what I wanted to do is work really, really hard, work my way up into corporate. That was my goal. During this time, though, I enrolled myself into school to start working on a computer science degree because I figured, if I'm ever going to get this tech job, I better think about, getting a degree. And so because I wanted to work in tech, computer science made the most sense. Started going to school, top of my class, all A's. I was doing really, really well. And then this opportunity at Microsoft came along. And so I applied, and within a week, they had called me back to schedule an interview. And I was so excited. Here I was, fresh out of prison and now getting ready to interview with one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And I knew that if I could get this job, it would completely change the trajectory of my life. Do you want me to keep going?
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you a question first, though. I mean, that took, and credit you, that takes a lot of intent, and because there's always somehow or other people around that maybe purposely test you to see if you can keep going and stuff. Did you have that, or did you just keep, like, I don't want to compare you to a horse, but a horse that has blinders on and just is going?
Yeah, I was very focused on succeeding. And I was not going to let any of their distractions get in the way of that. No, men, I wasn't going to, date, guys that, were, not on the right path. I wasn't going to hang out with people who weren't on the right path. So yeah, I was very focused. And there was a lot, like when you're at the halfway house, you're dealing with a lot of people. And there were men in this halfway house as well, and it was like constant, just guys hitting on me, hitting on all the girls there, right? Trying to hook up. That was like the thing. I was like, no, I don't want anything to do with that. I am good. I've dated enough losers. I'm on a different track now.
You're no longer and related to that loopy thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, I get the call for the interview and I knew that, if I was going to get this job, I better prepare my butt off, prepare for this interview like my life depended on it, because it really did. And I wrote down all the possible interview questions I thought they would ask. I prepared thoughtful answers for every single one, memorized it, went over it probably 1,000 times. And by the time I went in for the interview, I mean, I was ready. And every question she asked me, boom, I had an amazing response. And she told me, it was one of the best interviews that she had and that she wanted to hire me. And I was, I guess, the last interviewer, and she offered me the job.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That moment must have felt damn good.
It felt so good. And I was scared. I wasn't scared because I got the offer. I was scared because I knew the job was contingent on the background check. And I didn't know what to say or do in that moment. And all I kept thinking was, Shelley, you better tell her right now. And then I'm thinking, man, if I tell her, then she's gonna, definitely say, oh, well, maybe we don't want to hire you. There's always that fear.
Right.
But I ended up mustering up the courage, and I told her that I just got out of prison. I know that I have to do this background check, but I just wanted to let you know that my charges were for drugs. It's not who I am today. But I want to be fully transparent with you because this is going to get flagged. And she was really sweet about it. She said, we all make mistakes, and just make sure that you're honest about it on this background check, because if you're not,
right,
then you definitely won't get the job. And I don't know if they'll rescind your job offer or not, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And so I went back to the halfway house, and they sent me the link to the background check. So I got on my computer, filled out the background check information, hit send, and said, okay, here we go.
No kidding.
Let's see what happens. Yeah. And while I'm waiting for these results, and of course the results took extra long.
Of course.
And so this, while I'm while I'm waiting for the results, I'm looking all over the internet just to see if there's any blog posts, if there's any articles, if there's anything out there saying, whether Microsoft would hire somebody or has hired somebody with a criminal record. And I didn't find anything. So that kind of bummed me out, and didn't help my fear. Right.
Sure.
And it's interesting because I was doing, so while you're waiting for the background checks, they have you do all the onboarding. So during the onboarding process, they sent me this email, and at the bottom of the email, it said, if you have a criminal record, and if you feel like you've been discriminated against, contact the Fair Chance Ordinance. And I'm like, what is this? So I click on the link. I'm reading the website, and my eyes just got so wide. Like, I couldn't believe what I was reading. Basically, it stated that there's this special law in San Francisco that protects people with criminal records from discrimination. As long as you fit the criteria of the law, you are good. And so the criteria of the law was like the company had to be in San Francisco city limits. They had to have over 500 employees. The applicant had to have proof of their rehabilitation, which I had. The crime could not directly relate, so it was perfect. My charges were for drugs, had no bearing on my ability to sell computers, didn't directly relate. And then I think the other one was you had to have like reference letters, which I had that as well. So it's like everything, I fit all of it, right? And so I became hopeful, and I'm thinking, okay, well, Microsoft is the one that sent me this information. So clearly they know about it, and this is amazing, and I'm going to get this job, and this is real. But then a part of me, my skeptical brain was like, there's no way, like, this is too good to be true. And so I started telling my friends and my family about it. And it was funny because my dad, he's like, there's no way that ordinance isn't going to protect you. Microsoft's not going to hire you. You should just go look for another job, And I said, no, Dad, I'm going to wait and see what happens. And so the background check comes back flagged, just as I had predicted. And they gave me 5 days to respond. And so I took that as an opportunity to talk a little bit about what I had done wrong, but more importantly, what I had done right, and why they should hire me, and why I deserve to work for them. And all of those certificates of all those rehabilitative programs that I had completed while I was incarcerated, I had every single one of those certificates. So I scanned them all to my cloud drive, and I attached them to that letter, and I hit send because I wanted them to see that I really had turned my life around, and here was the proof of it, right? And also because when I read, what the Fair Chance Ordinance stated, the criteria for you to be protected by this law was to have proof of rehabilitation as well. So I then had to wait for them. I think it was another month for them to get all the information, excuse me, to look at my letter, my certificates, everything, and make a decision. And unfortunately, they came back and decided to rescind my job offer. And that was a really tough moment for me, because you have to imagine, like, when I got the job offer, there's no way I could hold that in. Like, I told all my friends, I told all my families, I was so proud of myself.
Yeah.
And now all of that came crashing down. And there was this moment of just complete, like, I felt like such a failure, and I was completely embarrassed. And it's like, okay, now what? Now I have to go and tell everybody that I told I got this job, that I really didn't. And I wasn't sure, what I was going to do. It was just like, and then I started having these thoughts, like, am I ever going to be able to rise out of this, like, box that society puts me in? Like, am I going to be stuck, in these low wage, minimum wage type jobs? Am I ever going to be able to, like, be a successful contributing member, and like, or am I going to have to pay for this mistake the rest of my life? And it was exactly like where it was like, what, you know, like your debt's paid to society, but it's not, it's really not, because you get out and then you have these invisible handcuffs on. And sometimes people have them on for the rest of their lives,
Mm.
you know, and it was this feeling of hopelessness, just despair, you know, like, God, I know that I can do so much more. And I just, because of all the, excuse me, the personal development that I had access to, I was this new person that was ready to just take over the world. And now I'm just being stifled and not being allowed to become my true potential and being limited by my past. And it's like, the past is the past. Why can't people focus on who I am today? Why? So it was just frustrating and very, very sad moment for me. Very, very sad defining moment. And so I was talking with my mom about it, and she says, well, did you talk to that fair chance ordinance? And I said, no. And because here was my thought process on that. Although they sent me the information, I figured there was some type of loophole or something I didn't know about. And because why would Microsoft send me that information and then rescind the job offer if, you know, but here's what I didn't understand, and what, you know, I didn't know at that time, is the people in San Francisco knew about the ordinance at Microsoft, but it was never communicated to headquarters. And guess where my background check went?
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a template that HR sends out and they may not even think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So I called the Fair Chance Ordinance and told them the situation and what happened. And when I told her what company it was, she said that they'd never fought a company that big. The biggest company they ever fought was Foot Locker.
Well,
And she said, she said, the reason why I'm telling you this is not because we're not going to, you know, help you. It's just, you know, be prepared that, you know, we're dealing with a very large company that has a lot of resources. And we're just, you know, really, we're just a small ordinance in San Francisco. And so after she said all of that, she said, so do you want to move forward? And I said, yeah, I do.
you didn't say damn, yeah.
Hell yeah. Well, you know, I knew that if I didn't, I would always be left with, you know, what if for the rest of my life. And I think, you know, honestly, I wouldn't have moved forward had I not done all of that personal development.
Well,
I wouldn't have had the skills to do so.
or the courage to do it.
I wouldn't have had the courage, the skills, you know, yeah. I mean, because I had learned about fear, and in some of these programs that I took, and how fear really limits us. And I learned about self-limiting beliefs, and I learned about, you know, those self-limiting thoughts. I learned about, you know, if we change our thoughts, we change our life, you know. And so all of these things came into play when it came time to whether I was going to challenge the company or not, or just tuck my tail in between my legs.
Which would
And
have been easier in a way, a lot easier.
it would have been so much easier. So much easier. Because every day it was like this roller coaster of emotions. Just, oh my goodness. But you know, I went toe to toe with one of the world's biggest tech companies. And you know, we went back and forth for a few months. And of course, you know, they came back with the normal things I think any company would say. Oh, you haven't been out of prison long enough, you're a liability, can't be trusted, you know, things, those kinds of responses. And our response was, well, I've changed my life. That's not who I am anymore. I put in the work. I'm rehabilitated. Here's my proof.
Yeah.
And they had never heard of this ordinance before, because
I
I was literally the first person to ever leverage it.
What's interesting there, sorry to interrupt, is, and I've seen this with pregnancies too, they would have been off the hook if they didn't make you an offer. But the fact they made you an offer, then rescinded it because of, is a whole different thing. So that's what makes people sometimes not tell everything right away. Like, I'm pregnant, or I'm this, or I'm not, whatever it may be, because then they might say, like you said before, well, it's not the right fit or whatnot, but then you got no recourse.
Exactly. Yeah. So, after going back and forth, I don't know, I think it was about a month, if I can remember correctly, they finally said, okay, we'll give you the job. But I had to re-interview. And then not only did I have to re-interview, but actually I was up against 3 other applicants, which I was very confused about, because I'm like, okay, if you're going to give me the job, then why do I have to be? But I guess what happened was these applicants had already applied for the job before they decided to allow me to apply for it. So I think they were just doing their due diligence, you know, and allowing them the opportunity to be interviewed. But I went in for my interview and I did horrible. I was so nervous. I had so much at stake, and it was the same girl that had interviewed me the first time, and she was so welcoming and supportive, but this time around she wasn't as welcoming and supportive, and at least in my opinion. And one of the questions I asked her at the end of the interview is there any reason why you wouldn't hire me?
Right.
And she said, well, I just don't see a lot of sales experience shining through. Doesn't mean you're disqualified from, getting the job, but it's just something I noticed. And all I heard was, you didn't get the job. I went back. I left that interview just really feeling sick to my stomach, emotionally and physically drained. Got back to the halfway house around, I think, noon, and I just was so exhausted. And I had told myself I'm not getting this job. There's no way. And I went and laid down and I slept that entire day, all the way through the night, woke up the next morning and just started to come to terms and process the fact that I wasn't going to be getting this job, and that I was going to have to try to figure something else out, and I'll just continue to go to school in the meantime. And then maybe in 4 years when I graduate, maybe I can find a job, a career.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like 2 or 3 days later, I get a call, and my phone rings, and then on the caller ID, it says Microsoft. I'm like, what? Why is Microsoft calling me right now? This is crazy. Okay, let's see what they have to say. And it's the recruiter, and she's congratulating me because they extended the offer to me. And I just screamed, what? Are you kidding me?
Is this really Microsoft?
Joke? Are you getting the job? Oh my gosh. She's like, she told me, she laughed. She's like, I've never gotten such an incredible response before. And oh man, it was this, like, I was just filled up with this life again. It was just like life was breathed into me.
No, it's
and I accepted the offer. I got off the phone. I went running downstairs because I had to tell all my, friends that I had and the staff there, because everybody knew what was going on with me and what I was going through. So I had to go, and tell everybody, you guys, I got the job. Can you believe it? People are like, yeah.
right, now I have someone we can get a computer at a discount from.
Yeah. And so that I'll never forget that moment. It was remarkable. It was I mean, I think that moment changed one of the world's biggest companies. You know, this was unprecedented. I was the first convicted, felon. I don't like to use that word, but I mean, I was the first person with a felony conviction to get into Microsoft, at least, within, because they only go back 7 years on the background check. So
Yeah.
I was, but I was the first person that had a convicted felony that got into Microsoft within that 7 year time frame or time span. So
No, I think it's first of all, congrats. Full disclosure, you kind of told me some of the story before, but you now it expanded, and I'm glad the audience could hear it. And to me, it's so important. So many things happened along the way that you may not have ever seen that fair chance thing on the paper.
right,
Never, they may not have taken you this, that, or the other. So many things, and when we talk about untapped talent, we mean people that have value that the world's not taking advantage of, not in a positive way, taking
right,
advantage of. And just the I'd love you to talk about some of the impacts that are made, the impact on, if that wouldn't have happened, the impact on yourself, the impact on family, the impact on the people in the halfway house that said probably, well, maybe there's a shot for me too. The impact from other formerly incarcerated people that hear this happen, the impact you're making from Winner's Circle and what you're doing. There's
right.
so many things. It's a dominoes, sometimes of one little point and then another little point that happen or don't happen. And people being strong enough like you to say, I'm going to do this. And then other people around you that support, maybe in one word, sometimes saying you can do it, or maybe in a
Right.
longer thing. Not only economic, and then how it affected Microsoft as a company, and maybe people there, like the lady that was so excited how you accepted.
Mhm.
She probably told a whole bunch of people, we can do something here, type of deal. So there's an
Right.
economic impact and there's a social impact. To you as an individual and so many others, and then the community. Can you even share what that feels like, the impact that's made from it?
It's the most incredible feeling in the world, I think. Just knowing that I'm being a trailblazer to help forge the way for others and to bring hope and to inspire others to reach further than they would have. One thing I'll say, and I think a lot of the reason why companies don't hire from this untapped talent pool is because of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so here I was now being given this opportunity to show them there's nothing to be afraid of. I am going to be an amazing employee. And I wanted to go above and beyond because I was so incredibly grateful that they had given me this second chance. And so every day when I came to work, I didn't even have to try to do a good job. I mean, I was just, it was just joy was oozing out of every pore of my body because, and so my mindset was completely different from any of my coworkers, because to me, this was not just a job. This was a chance. This was like, this had changed my life, not only my life, but, my child's life. And so, and I knew that if I, work really hard, which I wanted to do, then I could eventually work my way up into corporate. And so I did that. And the impact that, my attitude made within this company was that it showed them that, just because I had this criminal conviction did not mean I wasn't going to be a good employee. And I was able to excel very quickly. I remember my first 2 months working there, I was voted MVP. Within 6 months, I got my first promotion. Within I think a year and a half, I got another promotion, and this time it was in the corporate. So I moved it very, very, very quickly. I was always the top person, top sales. Always getting picked to go on special trips because I was the top person, you know. And my managers absolutely loved me. And I just remember thinking too, it was like, okay, I wonder, you know, if I'm going to have to deal with, like, I thought maybe there would be a moment like where there would be retaliation, because I felt like I kind of backed them into a corner and they had to hire me, but there never was, not once. And they actually completely embraced me. And then when I got into corporate, that's where I was really able to spread my wings and fly. And I ended up moving into a B2B sales role for them. I'm what they call a surface seller. So I sell Microsoft's computers to large enterprise customers. And so I finished last year as their #1 surface seller in the world.
I'd almost like to say, I don't know if this is a dad joke or not, but on the surface, you did spectacular. um, and
Yeah,
I just want to, I want to ask you a couple more questions. And like we say in LA, we got to keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel. That's what
yeah,
we say in LA. So, you know, there's always people that look and they engage or they complain and always talking about the negatives, the fear, that what can go wrong and this and that. They talk
yeah.
about weaknesses more than people's strengths. The fourth industrial revolution, they said is about technology, AI, virtual, all that stuff. But the fifth, which is partly why our name is Fifth Element, is really about humanity. And you've obviously shown humanity by all the work you did in prison to prepare for whatever was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you've also are showing humanity and sharing humanity by what you're doing with Winner's Circle.
Mm-hmm.
And which I'd love you to talk a little bit about. That's all about, I shouldn't say all about, but it's a lot about humanity that you're doing there with Winner's Circle, I believe, and also how it affected, like you said, people at Microsoft. Something maybe that they wished happened or didn't know what to do with, or were fearful of what could go wrong, and what they're seeing in reverse is probably massive loyalty more than a regular employee.
Right.
And so on and so forth. Can you share a little bit about that humanity part, Winner's Circle, and the next, what you're doing now to take it even farther?
Yeah, absolutely. So because of my lived experience and seeing some of the challenges in prison when it came to rehabilitation, because although I had access to a ton of different programs, not all prisons are as lucky as, you know, the prison that I was at. I was in a local prison that was easily accessible by volunteers. And so, but some of the challenges that I faced though was that you had 1,000 women in the prison. And when a volunteer would bring in a program, let's say they brought in a program about forgiveness, learning how to forgive yourself and others, for example, there's only 25 spots. So those spots fill up very quickly. And if you're not one of the first 25 people, then guess what? You don't get into the program. And there were many times I didn't get into a lot of programs I wanted to get into because of this.
25. Wow.
Yeah, very small. So when I got out in like what I went through with Microsoft and that whole experience created this passion inside of me to not only be a voice for this voiceless community and educate the public about the benefits of hiring formerly incarcerated, I also wanted to start a rehabilitative training program. But my goal is to scale this across all of the prisons in the United States so that everybody, even the most remote prisons, even level 4 maximum security, prisons, have access to my programming. Because what it did for me and the results that I was able to achieve because of this education, I know that if I can do it, they can do it. Just people need to have access to this. So I created Winner Circle, which is a holistic approach to rehabilitation. So not only it's a year-long program, the people that will be eligible for the program have to have 13 months left of their sentence. They will have to, there's many different modules. There's everything from forgiveness to self-love to public speaking to financial literacy, digital literacy. I mean, we have a whole curriculum focused on what that individual is going to need to know in order to get out and be a successful contributing member of society. Once we deal with the the self-limiting beliefs, the fear, the self-limiting thoughts, all of that, and we get the person, I say, categorically more whole as an individual, we then, once we've dealt with the root cause of the incarceration, we then move on to the vocational training piece. And so I chose sales for obvious reasons.
Who would have guessed?
Yeah. So the last 3 months are focused on teaching them sales skills, because the goal is to get them out. Once they get released, they can hit the ground running, and they can have the skills to get an entry level sales position, making a living wage. Because in order to break that cycle of poverty, they have to be able to have make enough money to provide for their family and themselves. And so with my story, with the brand that I've created, it just makes perfect sense that
it's a winner, you're saying.
Exactly. And yeah, hence the name Winner's Circle, because I know if more people have access to the same programming I had, they're gonna get out of prison and become their true potential. It's like we have a choice here. 95% of people are going to be released anyways, eventually. Who do we want them released as? The thug, the criminal, the gangbanger, the drug dealer? Or do we want them released as a rehabilitated sales rock star? You know what I mean? Somebody who's got the drive, the hustle, the motivation, the passion, a new filter, new view on life. And companies, my goal, and the other one of the key differentiators with my company as well, with Winner Circle, is that we're creating partnerships with companies, and we're saying, okay, listen, partner with us, and for any of your entry level, sales positions, inside sales rep, digital sales rep positions, partner with us and agree that you will interview our graduates upon release. I'm not asking them to lower the bar, because we don't want handouts. I'm just asking them to lower the barrier so that people will be given a fair chance, and that these employers are open to being a fair chance employer. And then now getting this incredible pool of talent that's been gone through intensive personal development. Most people don't even do that, that aren't incarcerated, put forth that much effort and energy into becoming developing personally. And so it's like this unprecedented program that is now going to revolutionize rehabilitation.
Yeah, I agree 1,000,000%. I compare a lot of things to sports, but it applies to business too. The best return on investment of an individual is generally after they've made a mistake. And if you fire them or don't let them in or whatnot after they made a mistake, you got no return. In fact, you've got negative return, because who knows what will happen after that to their personality, to their thoughts and everything. But someone who made a mistake on the field or on the ice or in life or whatnot can't be defined by one moment, maybe 10 moments, but not one moment. And when you share and talk and give them opportunity and tell them what they did wrong and go out there and let's work on that now, then that's the best return on investment you'll ever have. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. because what's the alternative?
Right.
We don't invest in them. We don't hire them. They continue on that path and stay stuck in the loser's loop.
Well, I think you're definitely bringing people into the winner's circle and out of the loser's loop.
Exactly.
Which is awesome. And first of all, it's been amazing to get to know you. So thanks for that. Always could use a really good friend, more and more good friends. So I appreciate that. And you've clearly demonstrated you are a leader who cares also, because not everybody takes on the work to do, for themselves or other people. What they should know, though, is that it's super fulfilling to do that, making an impact that way. So congratulations. And again, thanks for being a leader who cares.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the show.